come to you. Lord, we thank you that you are in charge. Lord, we thank you during this time that we remember the birth of Christ. We thank you for providing for our salvation. Lord, we pray for our world. We pray for healing and relief from this disease. We pray for the families who have lost loved ones. And Lord, we pray for a spirit of cooperation amongst the people that's in the best interest of everyone's health. Lord, we pray your guidance upon this governing body. Continue to direct them to do what's best for the people of Hutchinson. Lord, thank you for your love and your mercy. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Next item, please.
Item 4, oral communications from the audience.
Okay, this is the time of the meeting where we take communications from those who are viewing the meeting or in the audience on items that are not on the agenda. Todd, can you advise if there's anyone who would like to speak? The Zoom meeting isn't coming up for me.
Nobody's raised their hand.
No?
No.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me know if anyone does want to chime in later. Okay, seeing none, please call the next item.
Item 5, consent agenda.
I will move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Daveline,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Garza,
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho.
Yes, next item, please.
Item 6, consider redemption and payment of economic development revenue bonds and the sale and conveyance of certain property and disability supports of the Great Plains.
Good morning, Council. Angela Richard, Director of Finance. In 2006, the City of Hutchinson entered into a bond and lease agreement with Disability Supports of the Great Plains. The city, on behalf of Disability Supports, issued economic development revenue bonds for $1,165,000. The city then leased the property back to Disability Supports, with the organization being responsible for the debt and all costs incurred. This resolution is asking the city to authorize the redemption of the bonds for Disability Supports to pay off their debt, their bonds, and convey the property back to Disability Supports. Disability Supports plans to pay the bonds off on December 11th, provided the council approves. Disability Supports and the city's legal counsel have reviewed the enclosed documents and approved them. City staff recommends that you approve the submitted resolution and authorize the mayor to sign all related documents. Are there any questions?
Can you pinpoint the exact location of the property?
I believe Disability Supports is on Waldron.
Okay, is that the property, you're not talking about the former medical center property?
No.
You're just talking about that up on Waldron?
Yeah,
I
it
believe
says
so.
That's
Coventry.
correct.
It says Coventry in the description, and
Okay, I
yeah,
didn't see
that's,
that. Yeah. Very good, thank you.
yeah. That's where that is.
Okay, are there further questions for staff? I don't know if anyone from Disability Supports is on and wanted to comment on this item. No? Okay. Okay, well, is there a motion on this item?
Yeah, I would move to approve resolution of the governing body of the city of Hutchinson, Kansas, authorizing the redemption and payment of its economic development revenue bonds, Series 2006 Disability Supports Project, and the sale and conveyance of certain property to Disability Supports of the Great Plains, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, hearing none, please call the roll.
Daveline,
Yes?
Soldner,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Garza,
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho.
Yes, and I was just informed that we do have a public comment that is not agenda related that I'll go ahead and make time for it this time since we had some technical difficulties. So let's go ahead and hear from that person state your name and whether or not you're
Oh,
a
there we go. Never
citizen
mind.
of
We got it
Hutchinson.
now. Okay, thank you. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, yes. My name's Don Beidler, and I'm bringing up the subject that everybody likes is the pickleball. I've noticed over the last couple of council meetings this has been brought up, and there was a few items that we would like to comment on. One's a sports arena. We've been sometime in September, October, that was turned over to us to try to get some arrangement to play there during the winter time, and we've been working with them trying to get things to work out. But they couldn't come up with any times. The only times they had open was in the mornings, and that was not really workable since about 95% of the 70 to 100 people that play pickleball in town still work. So that wasn't a good option. So they sort of took themselves out of contention. We've heard about Memorial Hall being an option. We haven't heard any more about that. So we still have nowhere yet. The public courts where we've been playing since about April, we had permission to play there and so forth and to put down temporary tape. But the vandals kept removing the tape, and any signs that were put up, they always remove them. And of course, in the meantime, the courts got damaged by the vandalism. We'd be glad to leave the courts, so we're trying to figure out somewhere to go. And we had a meeting in July, I believe, the first part of July, about what was happening at the courts, and we thought we had things worked out, but it didn't go too good. But Rice Park's been talked about, and I think the first time that was brought up was about 3 years ago at a meeting we had there. It's a great place. They got infrastructure there already. They got the fencing, the lightings, and they got the courts. So we thought, okay, and that was brought up again, I believe, in September, some emails. And then we talked again in October. We talked to Mr. Combs, I think it was October 13th. We had a meeting there, and he presented us with a drawing. I don't know if you can see it or not, but he gave us a drawing of the Google Earth of the court, and he had 8 courts laid out. And we thought, well, great, maybe we're getting somewhere. At that time, he informed us, though, he only had enough money for about 2 or 3 courts. And we discussed, well, is there some way we could help in the matter to get at least 4 courts? We offered to do, maintenance work, construction work, whatever we could help with. And we even said that there was a possibility we could raise some money to do at least 4 courts. And he thought that was a good idea. I believe the October 20th, there was a meeting of the city council, and it was brought up that we were challenged to raise money. And we said, okay. We didn't know what that was about, but we thought that's something. And one of our members contacted a member of your city council to ask about that. And he thought, the council member thought that it'd be a good idea if we put some skin in the game. And we were asking, well, what amount was the skin he was talking about? And the amount of $10,000 was brought up. And we thought, well, okay. Sounds like a lot of skin, but we'll give it a try. And we talked to several members of our group that evening, which was a Thursday, I believe, and they were reluctant at first to do it because they thought, well, this should be a city project and city money and so forth. But we eventually come to a consensus that we would try to raise the money if we could have 6 courts, because we knew 4 would be overloaded very quickly. And we thought, well, if we could raise the money for it, we could get 6. And within 24 hours, we had 3,000 of it raised. And we had, talking to other community members and so forth, that we had a possibility of anywhere from 10 to 15,000 more. But they wanted to see plans of what the whole design was going to be. We said, okay. We contacted Mr. Combs again to find out if and when there would be a design completed. He told us it'd probably take 3 to 4 weeks to get things done. And again, this was mid-October, so forth, and 1st November. And he said it would take 3 to 4 weeks. He could probably have some kind of design up. We said, okay. So in the meantime, that we found out that, well, they were going to do 8 courts They thought 6 they could possibly do, but they wanted to leave one of the courts open as a tennis court. We thought, well, okay. We'd go along with that as long as that, we could get our 6 courts, and we came up with the idea if they want to put a tennis court in, it could be marked as pickleball courts also that you'd have to use nets on if the other 6 courts were overloaded, which we do believe will happen. Okay, that went on, and then it went from, and then we had one of our members, he even went so far as to draw up a design and so forth, and it took him about a weekend to do it. He had it laid out where we had our 6 courts, had the tennis court and so forth, and we went on and calculated some approximate cost just to see what it'd be, and we communicated that to Mr. Combs, and the reaction was not what we expected. He said he's been pulled in so many directions and so forth that he didn't, he couldn't do anything with it. We said, okay. Well, then the 6 courts went down to 4 courts, and they
Okay,
thought,
Don,
well, I could put
you're kind of
4
over your
there.
time here, so can you kind of summarize what your main ask is today? We do happen to
What
have
we're
the
trying to do is, we've been asked to raise money.
Mhm.
All right, that's fine. If we have some kind of design, something to go with, to go to these people, we're not getting anywhere. We're not getting a design, and we're saying that we need a design for 6. We're not getting any input from Mr. Combs or anybody that is telling us, giving us a design, so we can take it to the people that want to donate money to help with this. But we just can't go to them and say, hey, we want money for our courts. We need some kind of design. Well, if we don't get stuff started on this shortly, because Mr. Combs thought he could have this done by spring. And we thought, well, okay, we need something so we can take and start raising money. It's not that we can't raise the money, we think we can get it, but we need a design. And we're not getting anywhere with a design. We're not getting anywhere with anything on this. We're just, everybody keeps saying, yes, we'll have this, we'll have this. But if you want us to get off the public courts so we do not have the problems that we had this last year, we need to get something started on this. And it's just not like we can do this overnight, but we've been waiting and waiting for this design that hasn't happened yet. If we can just get somebody to push this design through so we can get out there and start raising money. We can't do it without a design, because they like I say, the people that we've talked to said, well, bring us a design and we'll see what we can do. And we think we have in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $15,000 that we can commit to this project if we have some kind of dates that'll start, some kind of dates that'll end, something. And it's just right now we have nothing, and we do not want to have the same problems that we had at the public courts. It's just
Justin, do you have a few minutes
settled
to talk about the process of how a project like this works, design and such?
Yeah. Good morning, Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities. We've had lots of communication with Mr. Beidler and Steve Drock as well. And one of the challenges with this is it's not going through the normal CIP project. So there's not a process. So there's not, $10,000, $20,000 set aside to hire an architect to come in and design it. So we're doing it in-house. And the other challenge we've run into is it seems like every time the courts at Rice Park are brought up, the ideas change, whether it's 4 courts or 6 courts. And then there's ideas of tennis courts, which I don't believe we want to go back with the tennis court. So the scope is continuing to change. And so it's hard for me to sit down and come up with a design and cost estimate when every email I get is something different.
Gotcha.
And so what I've decided is I'm trying to engage more people than just the 2 folks that generally speak about pickleball. There's a much larger community out there that play pickleball. So my approach has been to engage more people. Talking with Hutchinson, they're going to be a key in the programming this as we move forward. There's also a few other players that have reached out to me, and so really it's trying to get a consensus of what's best for the community, and not just kind of the demands of 1 or 2 people within the community. And I feel like that I'm working. Actually, I've got a meeting set this afternoon with my staff to go out, walk the site, figure out exactly where the layout can happen, and kind of move forward that way. So I know it's not a great answer, but it definitely has been a challenge with the, like I said, how everything seems to change with every email that I receive as far as what the expectations are and what the needs are. So like I said, at this point, I'm just kind of moving forward with what I think is best for the community. I'm thinking 4 to 6 courts. I need to lay it all out, cost estimate, and then move forward with it.
Is there a substantial cost difference between expanding it to the 6?
My
assuming
early
there is.
estimates were about $3,000 per court.
Oh, okay.
There's a few still unknowns, so that'd be the cost of converting the lights to LED, and wind screens. We haven't priced out the wind screens, and then some internal fencing.
So best case scenario, are we still on track for spring?
Yes.
We're still on track for spring.
Yeah, we haven't made any progress out there, but I've been down to 1 maintenance staff for the past 2 weeks due to COVID. So we've been hit really hard over at my shop.
So Justin, it would be your professional view that the plans could be completed here within the next month to 6 weeks, and that construction could commence this spring?
Absolutely.
That's what your
Yep.
your goal is?
Yeah, if I can keep my staff here and healthy, because
Okay.
in order to make the numbers work, we have to do it with in-house staff. Yeah.
Okay. So a little bit of clarity would help between you and the pickleball group as far as the design and what their wishes are.
Correct.
I know they're a group that probably aren't as patient and probably understand the process as you require. But we've got a willing group that have stepped up and have agreed to go out and raise some monies, and I think that's commendable on their part. And to leverage those dollars, hopefully we can optimize our investment in the project, so we can at least say, because I think my sense is that we're somewhat behind as a community, and I think you would
On pickleball,
on
absolutely.
pickleball.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That maybe
May I make a comment here?
breakthrough for some other developments in pickleball courts on other locations, but concentrate on Rice Park.
Well, and can you speak to the availability of the sports arena and what's going on there?
That's a better question for Hutchinson. I've put some pressure on them to help accommodate the pickleball group. With all the activities that happen at the sports arena, I know scheduling it's a big challenge for them to get it in the evening hours. So there has been talk of opening up Memorial Hall for some evening kind of drop-in types. I don't know how that has gone or how it's progressed. I've basically gave Hutchinson the okay to use the facility, but that would be a program through Hutchinson, because they would have to have somebody there to help staff it.
Okay.
Well, but hasn't Hutchinson shut the arena down?
In the short term, yes, for
That's
over the
what I
next
thought,
couple weeks.
at least,
Mhm.
yeah, till after the first of the
Yeah.
year.
Well, and I think that's something that's been lost to on a lot of groups, that, we are in a pandemic. I'm not using that as an excuse, because this group has been very vocal for years, and we have been, again, we're behind the ball on this. But, so I want to do what we can to move that forward. But I would like to see the rec try to find some space at the sports arena. That is a city-owned facility, not a rec or college-owned facility as it's sometimes treated. And so if we can find space there, I think that would be an ideal situation. Are we still using Memorial Hall for Boys and Girls Club?
We are.
I definitely don't want to displace those kids for pickleball courts.
Yeah, the idea for pickleball at Memorial Hall would be in the evenings after Boys and Girls
That's
Club
right.
have left.
Boys and
Okay.
girls would be
Well,
gone.
if we could do both, then
Yeah.
that would be an even better use of that facility. So. Okay.
May I make a
Dawn?
comment here?
Sure.
We've been in talks with the sports arena, because Mr. Combs turned that over to us in September, October, and we've talked to them, and they've told us basically through the winter there is nothing they can do, because our members need evenings and weekends. We have, 70 to 100 people here in town that play pickleball. They have to leave town to play because there's nowhere to hear. But we've been trying to get things set up with the sports arena, but again, they have told us that the only time it's available is mornings, and that just doesn't work. We've tried evenings, weekends. They say they're so busy that this winter that would not be a feasible project. So
Okay.
we
Don,
would
you
hope
heard
something
from-
could be
you
worked
heard from
out,
Mr.
but
Combs
everything
that,
we're getting back from Mr. Finley and so forth is that it's not going to happen. It's not possible this winter to do it.
Don, I think you heard from Mr. Combs that his intention is to proceed with the construction design drawings, and that anticipating construction to commence sometime this spring, hopefully March, April.
That'd be good, if we can get construction started, but again, we come up the same problem. When's it going to end? Is it not going to be done until June? We have the same problem at the public courts with the tennis group. What will happen then? What will happen when the tennis season starts up again this season? Are we still going to be allowed to use 2 of the courts, or what's going to happen? Are we just going to have to shut down pickleball for the tennis season?
Well, if you
I don't
had,
think that's the intention of the Rice Park
no, if you have your
courts.
own courts.
Is it, Justin? Pardon me?
Well, the courts, if it doesn't start until February, March, building the courts, they're going to be concrete inserts. The concrete's going to take 28 days to cure for each court. So that puts you already into April. I mean, if you start in March and putting in courts, it's going to take a week or so to get everything ready to go. It's going to take another week or so at least to pour concrete. So you're 1st of April, you're not even going to be able to start marking the courts, start doing anything with the courts until, middle of May.
Yeah. So what's the
again,
alternative?
you're
You don't
into
want us to
tennis
build
season.
them? I mean, we can't control the weather. We're going to do our best here. When do you think they would
It's
be
not the weather,
completed?
it's the curing time of the concrete. Concrete needs to cure for 28 days before you put a surface on it. You can't just put concrete down and come back 3 days later and put a surface.
Don,
so
we're going to
you
start
have-
this as
you have
soon as
curing
it's
times.
feasible with the weather. We're not going to drag our feet on this anymore. Trust me, we want a solution just as badly as you and your group does. But we cannot control the weather. If it's snowing or wet, we can't start it. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we can pour in the wintertime. We just need a couple day window where we're not getting really down far below freezing. We can cover it and tarp it and stuff. So we don't have to wait until March. And that's not the plan, is to wait till March to pour it. The plan would be to have them ready for play in the spring, meaning April.
Okay, fantastic.
Not beginning in March. Because Don is correct. There is, when you surface the concrete, there is a 28-day drying time once you pour the concrete, so that material will
So these
will
courts
adhere.
would be designated for pickleball
Yes,
primarily?
They'll have a permanent pickleball net, permanent pickleball lines. So somebody could come in there and kick a soccer ball around, but there's not really another way to officially use those with those permanent lines and
Okay.
permanent net.
And Justin, when do you think we could get an answer on Memorial Hall and the sports arena? I know the sports arena is closed, but we,
Yeah, I can communicate with Hutchinson this week.
Okay.
And I would say by the end of the week, have something that I can communicate with the pickleball group.
that would be fantastic. I think that they would appreciate just as much communication as possible.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your work on this. I know it's been a lot. Okay, is there anyone else who wanted to make a public comment that we weren't able to get to before the agenda item started? No? Okay. Seeing none, please call the next item.
Item 6B, consider eminent domain resolution for Cow Creek Channel improvements.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. Council, you know that the main stormwater management project right now is the Cow Creek Channel improvement. The city has acquired all of the tracts of land necessary for that except for one, and the reason we can't acquire the one, there's no living person to buy it from. And this particular tract was sold at a sheriff's sale, acquired in 1956. The individual that had it was Boyd Ryder. He died in 1963. We don't know of any heirs, any family remaining. In fact, it shows on his headstone, he was memorialized by his, or commemorated by his friends. So we suspect there wasn't any family, and the address shown in the records of the appraiser shows his name and address, but I went to that address and there's no structure there. It's a vacant
There's
lot.
no structure.
Yeah.
No, it's a vacant lot. And you can see in the aerial photo there, the tract, and you can see why it's remained. Over half of it is under Cow Creek. So, yeah, I'm sure that's why it didn't end up in a subsequent tax sale, because what are you gonna do with it? There are some that are zero valued by the county, so they don't just keep going through the tax sales. This wasn't zero valued, but it didn't have but a few dollars of unpaid taxes. And speaking with the county counselor, he would love for the city of Hutchinson to acquire this tract and get it off their tax rolls.
Can see why.
So, the first step in doing so for eminent domain is a resolution calling for a survey and a legal description. And then once the property is identified by survey and legal description, I come back to the council with an ordinance approving the eminent domain proceeding. So this is the first step. And absent not having anyone to contact to buy it from, we would have
Yeah.
just purchased it outright. But there's no one. So we're asking the council to approve this resolution so we can proceed with the Cow Creek Channel improvement.
Okay. Any thoughts, comments, questions?
Pretty simple.
I did have a question somewhat unrelated. In relation to stormwater management, I saw that conversations had reopened with the Kansas State Fair on.
Yes.
How are those going?
I would love to talk to you all about that manager's report. It's kind
Okay.
of broadened into a larger topic, and
Okay,
it's one we need some group discussion on.
all right.
Yep,
Well,
great timing. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, is there a motion on this item?
I will move to approve the resolution declaring it necessary to acquire interest in real estate for the purpose of improving, widening, rerouting, and reconstructing a portion of the Cow Creek Channel for stormwater management, and authorize a survey and description of the land or interest to be condemned to be made by a licensed land surveyor or a professional engineer who is competent to conduct a land survey and to cause the same to be filed with the city clerk, and authorize the mayor to sign. My, that was lengthy.
Second.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Bagwell?
Yes.
Garza?
Yes.
Tyra Stegravolo?
Yes, next item, please.
Item 7A, consider resolution of support for Community Fisheries Assistance Program Grant Agreement.
Good morning, Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities. This will come up on the screen here. So this item is support for a grant application that we put in last fall through Kansas Wildlife and Parks for the improvement of river access along the old, or at the old Fun Valley Water Slide site. Again, this is just kind of an overview of the site itself. The location we're kind of looking at is right in here for a parking lot and then a roadway, improved roadway, and then the actual access point would be through this sandbar right here. It's a nice spot. I was actually out there yesterday. It's a really good launch site. Here's the current launch site that's being used now. It's an unauthorized, unimproved, basically county right-of-way along 4th Street, and people are putting in right in here, and they've started pulling in here, and see this is just widened and widened and widened. They're actually going all the way down now to the access road to this property We've created kind of a track trail along the ditch to access this site, just it keeps getting so rutted up. And so this is just a little bit different angle of the site. You can see here's 4th Street, so here's the current access down at the very bottom corner. But the specifics of this grant, it's a $40,000 grant, so it's a 50-50 match, so it's $20,000 city, $20,000 from Kansas Wildlife and Parks through the CFAP program. And the items we laid out would be to use asphalt millings along this main roadway and then a chip seal over the top so it would look like an asphalt road, as well as kind of similar treatment on a parking lot somewhere generally in here. We don't have the exact layout of that yet. Somewhere generally in here. And then we'll have to do most likely some stairs. This is about a 12-foot drop here. There's some sort of levee here that we'll have to have access down to the water, and then to access this really nice sandbar for the actual canoe launch where folks can put their canoes in off this sandbar. So some additional things we asked for in the grant would be funding for fencing. So there is private property adjacent to this site, so we'd want to make it clear where that private property was, provide them with some fencing back in this area along the edge of that private property, so that people felt more comfortable once this is done coming in this gate. This gate then would remain open, and then the fencing and the gate would be moved back here to protect the private property. We also put in some money for some additional amenities, site amenities, things like picnic tables, those sorts of things. So this has been on top of a grant that Kansas Alliance of Streams and Wetlands received, which actually marks the entire Arkansas River from, I believe it's from Great Bend all the way down to the Oklahoma border, with things like mile markers. This would get a really nice kiosk sign, so a big 3-panel sign that they would install and maintain at the parking lot. Really, this turns this into a proper, nice river access point. Kind of the one hook, I guess, with this, by accepting this grant, we are on the hook for 10 years for this site. So any improvement we make, we have to maintain for 10 years. So some of Kansas Wildlife and Parks grants have much longer lifespans on them. 10 years is actually relatively short time frame, but we are, if we do agree to this, we are on the hook for 10 years to maintain this as a water access site. So it is my recommendation. Excuse me. It is my recommendation to support the grant agreement with Kansas Wildlife and Parks, so that we can develop this river access site.
How does this affect what we previously discussed?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sorry, I meant to bring that up. So this would really be the first step in working out an agreement with one or both of those groups that we spoke with on the 10th of November. Neither one of those groups were really none of their vision was really to do a river access. It was something they were going to do because we kind of were asking them to. So this takes kind of a burden off of them, and then would still allow both of those groups to kind of potentially we could work on a lease agreement with one or two of those groups.
How is the lease agreement working with Art Canoe right now? Because this would basically take them out of the picture because you couldn't sell it.
They would be more, yeah. If they have shown no interest in leasing the site, and it's always been my recommendation, and the feedback I've received from council has been to not sell the site, and so this does take Art Canoe out of the picture if they are solely wanting to purchase a site, if they're wanting to lease it, or if they want to do a vendor license where they have the sole authority or sole access to offer commercial floats out of this site. This definitely would be a possibility.
Well, they had mentioned several times to me that they wanted some improvements for access.
Yeah.
So I would think they would welcome this outside of the
Yeah.
inability to purchase. They've asked both the county and the city to improve access.
Yes. Yeah, they're currently using private property to access the river. They've got an agreement with a private property owner to the, I always get turned around out there, north or west, I guess west. And they've got a little sandbar up there they're using, so they're no longer even using the 4th Street.
Would this
access.
then replace what's currently happening, because it's pretty deleterious to the road condition?
Yes.
The way it's
Yeah.
going down now.
Yeah, I would work with the county to see if we could put up some sort of barrier or something to, once we get this up and going, so people don't continue to try to use that. And we'll also do signage along 4th Street, so people,
And what about the old water park?
Um,
Slides.
so this grant really will not touch that side of the property at all, so that's where those other 2 groups would come into play with working on that site.
Because if the gates, is the gate always open anyways?
Typically it is, yeah, not always. I have seen it locked, but usually there's 3 locks on that gate: city lock, the private property, and then the FOP. They have
Yeah.
some property up there. They have a lock, so they're all daisy chained together. So if one of them
Okay.
opens it and never closes it, it generally stays.
I guess my only concern was if there was more traffic up there in an area like that, what's our guarantee people aren't gonna be trying to get on those and where it would get hurt?
On the old water slide site. Yeah, we definitely need to
Secure that.
consider that. I mean, people are using it now. They're getting in there. There's 4-wheeler tracks and stuff in there, so people are already using it. But we can definitely keep or develop some sort of signage and maybe a simple, like a single cable type fence to try to prevent people from. I mean, I found out the harder you work at trying to keep people out of
Yeah.
something, the harder
Yeah.
they're going to work
Yeah.
to get into it. So, I mean, we'll definitely do our best to notify people to stay out of it.
So the daisy chain locks that are all there, the common person who has a canoe that wants to ride there, they can't get in there because all those locks are there, am I right? It's not open to the public all the time, right?
It would be when we're done. It would be.
Okay.
Currently, they're using this site, this unimproved,
Right.
unauthorized
Yeah.
launch site.
My,
So-
I guess my only concern here, and I know the majority of the council doesn't want to sell the property, but I'm just gonna throw it out there because I think it needs at least to be discussed, is Art Canoe's probably, out of all the groups, the only ones that would have the funding to really develop that into something. Right? And by us not selling to them, we're kind of losing out on that entrepreneurship, private business, and because they actually do have the funds to develop it, make it into a really cool camping area and all that. And so, and the other groups, I'm just not sure if they have the fortitude to actually develop it. And that's my one concern, is we have an option, if we do sell it, where they they're with the chamber and they have the funds available and they have a plan and they could develop it into a really cool place. Is there any way we could work with the county to have access near there but still sell the property so it can be developed into something really cool, because we know the funding and the capability is there? Just think that needed to be pointed out.
Early on, I did attempt to work with the county to improve this site. They had very little interest in developing it and allowing and kind of sanctioning it as a canoe launch. Now, that's been a few years ago. And also the direction I got internally was that if it's not the city's property, we don't necessarily want to invest a lot of time and effort into that site. So I haven't made efforts recently with the county, but at that time, the direction I was given
We have
was that was kinda off the table.
we have collaborations with the county with like the police department and other things, I just don't think, we know, I mean, a private business, they have the funding and the availability to turn it into a really cool campground.
Yeah, and I've never questioned.
And then we don't have the expenses for the next 10, 20, 15 years of maintaining this.
I've never questioned the Art Canoe's ability to develop it. I think they would do a fantastic job.
Yeah.
My single hangup has always been that in the master plan that we did that included
Mhm.
the statistically valid survey of all the residents of Hutchinson,
Yeah.
access to water was the number 3
Yeah,
item
I'm
on
not
that
saying
list.
that. Is there anywhere else, or if we can work with the county, or anywhere else that we could really put a launch pad with the city, with still being able to sell it to our canoe? Because I do, they have the funds and the ability to do it. And we wouldn't have the city expenses. And it would be a really cool destination site. Because they, so I don't think we should take that lightly.
Yeah, this is definitely the best spot that the city on. I mean, this is why Art Canoe wants it, is because it's such a good launch site. I don't want to say there aren't other possible ones. I'm sure there are, but not that are as this size and have the amenities, have the sandbar that's right there that's perfect for launching, and those sorts of things. So, I mean, that's why Art Canoe wants the site so bad, is because it's great for launching canoes. And it's a great access site.
Once we take this grant, are we obligated, we can't sell it in that 10-year span, or?
For 10 years, we have to maintain it, the improvements that we make with the grant funds. Yes.
We could sell property outside of it.
Yeah, we could sell the rest of the site.
Rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
We could sell
West.
the hill, those sorts of things. But
But that would be kind of hard with the road going right through the middle, right? So you could only sell the, west half after the hill, which doesn't have any river access. Except for way up there, I guess, in the tippy corner.
But by accepting the grant, the river access piece is already taken care of. So if say down the road Art Canoe wanted to purchase the hill and the rest of the site, and that was something we would entertain for
Okay, so let's
camping,
talk about that. Could they purchase the hill and the rest of the site for the camping and then get a lease vendor's right to the river access?
I've thrown that option out to them, not with the purchasing piece, but with the vendor right to
Because
use
I
the
understand
public access.
why would I lease and then build all these camping buildings and when I don't even own the property, right? Like if I'm gonna invest and I'm gonna build like cabins and campsites and invest my money, I'm gonna wanna own the property. Because I'm making improvements to something I don't necessarily own isn't a smart business deal, right? So, my thing is, if we did this and gave them vendor rights, would we still be open to maybe selling the remainder of the property so that they could build those kind of things and create equity within their own property?
I would be more open to that idea than selling the entire site, because I feel like it's my job to offer that public access, which is what the community is telling us that they want. So I am much more open to that idea, as long as there's an agreement
there
that
any way
that
we could-
access site remains open
Yeah.
and free to the public.
Is there a deadline on this, or could we put this off for a couple weeks?
There's probably a deadline, isn't there, for the
There,
grant?
there is, I mean, we're actually past the deadline. They wanted this signed, back in October. And we told them kind of what the process, what the discussions were that we were having, so they understand. So, they haven't given me a hard date, but I know they've wanted it months ago, so.
Okay.
Are there other comments or questions on this item?
I wish
This-
we had
this just
Art
seems to
Canoe
be,
here.
Consistent with the recommendations of the master plan,
Mm-hmm.
and your observations of, providing access to the river, public access.
Yes.
So, to me, that's consistent with the recommendations.
Have you ever seen any kind of drawings from our canoe as to what their campground layout would look like? I mean, I've talked with Scott and Michelle several times, and it's always very, well, we want to do this, but I've never seen anything concrete.
I don't recall, Mayor, do you remember when we met at the chamber, did they have a drawing?
Not that I know of.
I don't remember. If I did, it's not ringing a
They've
bell.
certainly put a lot of time and effort and thought into their business plan, so I don't want to discredit that.
Oh,
But
I don't either,
but-
but I'm just,
Yeah.
I've never seen anything concrete.
yeah,
As far as plans, I don't believe that
Yeah.
I have. If
Okay.
I have, it's not jumping out at me.
Could you reach out to them about the possible partial sale with vendors' rights for me?
Mhm. to see if they'd be open to the,
And then,
basically everything
yeah,
left
and if
of
we
the-
could get that, and then possibly them drawing out, like what Nancy said, a
Here's a
map.
point of order. I think we probably want to make sure that that's consistent with the wishes of the governing body. Not a bad suggestion, but I do know that that may not be consistent with the last discussion of the work session that included this
Yeah.
body. So I think before we would direct staff to do that, we would want to make sure that the governing body is comfortable with that as an approach. No objections to it, just procedural.
Okay.
And I do have a feeling that part of their business plan is to control that access. Because we've kind of gone down this road before
Yeah.
with them, and they didn't have a lot of interest.
But if they had the
That's
vendor's rights, they would still control that access for
But people
commercial
could
use.
still,
See, I don't
Access
want,
it
I don't want to
publicly.
limit John Q. Public from going and
Public
putting
access.
his
Yeah.
canoe in. Somehow there's got to be a balance there.
It would
Um,
still be, it would just be commercial, public could still come and go with the vendor lease.
And I have pitched that idea to them,
Yeah.
and they have not seemed to be real thrilled with it. So.
See, I don't think, I think they want the whole ownership, the whole thing, and not the split.
I was just asking if you could ask if they were interested, that way we could further discuss it, because there's no
I think
point in
we kind of
discussing it
asked them before.
if they're not interested.
At the work session, the parting words with that specific group, Art Canoe, was, have you considered a lease? And their response to the group was, well, we've never been asked, we've never seen one.
Yeah,
And so I would put it back, the onus on them, that if they are interested and they think that there could be potential congruence with their business plan, even under a
Yeah.
long-term lease, a 25 or 30-year lease, set it to the time frame of their improvements,
yeah. I
which
just,
would not be,
from
uncalled
a
for.
business standpoint, I wouldn't want to invest and improve a property I didn't own,
a
So
lot
for
of
us to
businesses do
guess-
though.
you know?
For us to guess what their lease terms would be, if they have an appetite for lease
Yeah.
terms, which they kind of acted like they might, I think instead of us guessing what that lease might look like, have them present to us what their favored lease might look like. And then we could actually have something to talk about, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we keep going in circles with this because we don't really have anything concrete from them. I mean, they have approached it from buy it or else. And I'm hearing from everybody with the exception of Sarah. And yes, Sarah, I agree with you. Putting money into something you don't own is problematic. But I think the rest of us are kind of like, we hate to turn loose of an asset that down the long haul might be more beneficial if we kept control of it. So, I don't know.
I will say that there are several businesses or several major buildings, even just up the street in the downtown area, that are owned by other people. And the retailers put tens of thousands of dollars into
Yeah.
fashioning those spaces into what they need, even though they don't own them. Such was the case with the bookstore. The tenant in the Wiley building, they don't own that, but they've completely reimagined that space with lots of investment. So it's not unheard of. I definitely am interested in public access. I think that what our canoe brings is a really unique experience, and that people will still seek them out, preferably if they have that option, rather than doing it on their own. So I think that their experience is strong enough that we can allow for both. Like, they will still thrive even if we allow people who don't want to spend money on their business to access the river.
Just apparently you're confident that the $40,000 will cover these improvements that you've laid out?
Yeah, yep, we've done the cost estimating with the engineering department on the roadways.
Okay.
That's the most expensive piece.
The roadway.
But yes, we are confident that,
Okay.
that will get it done. There was some in-house labor and some grubbing and those sorts of things as well that we can get reimbursed for, so that'll count towards our 20,000.
Okay.
So you're saying that we have to make a decision, you would think we probably have to make a decision today on the grant today, right?
I think we owe it to Kansas Wildlife and Parks to make a decision today. They've been waiting on us for a while to have these conversations. Because if we don't accept the grant, there are other grantees who have applied who I'm sure would love to.
Would love to have
So, I'm not saying we have to, but I think the right thing to do is make a decision today, so we can either make progress on this one way or the other, I guess.
Yeah, I for one would like to get off center. Is there a motion on this item?
I would move to approve the agreement with Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism for the development of the 4th Street Arkansas River Access Point and authorize the mayor to sign the Community Fisheries Assistance Program Grant Agreement.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Dayline?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Bagwell?
Yes.
Garza?
Yes.
Tyra State Cavalla.
Yes, next item, please.
Item 7B, consider Hobart Debtor Concession Building Design Services.
We need some assistance from IT. Good morning, Justin Combs again. So this item is for design services for concession building at Hobart Debtor. This project was approved in the 2021 CIP, so we're a little early for this, but the reason is so we can get this project going, hopefully in time for summer and fall baseball at Hobart Debtor. So if you're not familiar with Hobart Debtor, just real quick, we'll walk through. This is the concession building here. I believe this is an addition that came a little bit later. The building is just a stick built, so wood frame, wood siding, rolls asphalt roofing on about half of it, and then the rest of it has just traditional asphalt shingles. My best guess is the building's between 40 and 50 years old. This building here was built approximately 10 years ago. It is the ticket booth on this end of the building, and the majority of the building are new restrooms. This is a much nicer building, split face block construction with a metal roof type building. So, also in this RFP was improvements to the patio area, so where the fountain is now. So improve that so that it works better with the concession stand as far as stacking space, and then just general flow through the ticket booth to the stands. Typically people like to sit on the third base side, and so just improving the overall flow of the site. There's a little bit closer up picture of the building. As you can see, the building is not in the greatest of shape and has been added on to. There is a sag here in the roof line, not real sure what's going on there. This is the addition that's now an office space here, and then a really weird restroom / mop closet. I'll show you a picture of it in a second. Into the building, all the electricity has been run externally for some reason. I'm not sure when that was done, but definitely not the way things would typically be done. This was an old restroom that's now been converted to storage. You can see there's the grab bar back there for the toilet, so this is just being used for storage. There's 2 of these. The other one basically looks identical to it. Here is the actual inside of the building. A few years ago we did a little bit of work. There's a center island we took out and patched in the floor. Here's that toilet, restroom, mop, sink, janitor, closet combination that I mentioned. It really does not serve a whole lot of purpose. Just another view of the patio fountain. Most likely the fountain would go away. It's a nice feature, but it really kind of interrupts the flow as people come into the facility. Here's just a little bit better look of the new building. You can see the split face block. And that would be the intent with the new building. Would be to downsize most likely. The current concession stand is much larger than we need. It's very inefficient in use from an operations standpoint. So the idea would be to condense it and make it look a little bit nicer, and then develop a building that's going to be there for 50, 60, 70 years by going with a block building. So again, just another look at that. The metal roof on the newer building and the patio area. So we did have 6 firms that responded and had actually really good proposals. It's probably the hardest or the most competitive group of proposals I've ever had to review, which is a good thing. So the review committee was myself, Sean Thomas, the assistant director, and Tony Finley from Hutchinson. Hutchinson does operate the concession stand for us, and so I wanted their input as well. We ultimately, all 3 decided separately on Schaefer, Johnson, Cox, Fry. There's a couple reasons for that. One reason, just based on price, I know it doesn't appear that they're the lowest price, but as you'll notice, several of these firms did not include everything we asked. So if you see here, for instance, Landmark, their price is $27,500, but I put a little plus next to it because they did not include the land survey, which is something that we asked them to include in the proposal.
Can I interrupt you and just ask, how critical is that land survey?
It's going to be very critical.
And is it really?
It is, because the building itself, the design of the building is going to be very simple. I mean, it's a concession stand, hopefully a couple, or there will be family restrooms, and then hopefully a small office for like a tournament director. So the building itself is very simple. Its placement on the site is just going to be very challenging. We have overhead power lines. We have the bleachers that are fixed. We have the other building that's fixed. So having that land survey is very, very important. They would have to do it. So what I'm saying with Landmark is their price is not $27,500, or the cost to the city would not be $27,500 for these services. There would be the additional survey piece on top of it. And so we also felt like Schaefer, Johnson, Cox, Fry did the best job of showing projects of similar size and scope. They've worked on a lot of athletic facilities that were larger developments, but within those had standalone concession buildings of this size. And then we also have a great relationship in past projects with Schaefer, Johnson, Cox, Fry. If you remember, they were the lead architect for the sports arena. They also do almost all the work, or probably all the work at the community college. So they are a great firm to work with. So, and Gary Holler is on the line, I believe, on Zoom. If there are any questions for Gary, so he's the lead architect on their proposal. So, like I said, this was probably the most difficult group of proposals. Generally, there's one that just stands out. This group was very competitive, and I felt like Schaefer, Johnson, Cox, Fry showed just a bit more as far as past projects, and then their past performance, and then they're including everything in the price that we asked them to do.
Is it premature to estimate what the construction costs would be?
So in the budget, it's $300,000. I budget $330 total for the project, $30,000 being designed, $300 being the construction of the building. So, and that will be something we'll stay as absolute close to that number as we can. It hasn't been bonded yet or anything. That's a 2021 project, but we wanted to get the design going quickly. So.
You wouldn't have any of our maintenance people doing the work at all, that's all?
We haven't got to that point yet. Potentially, from a mechanical and electrical standpoint, it's going to be very simple. So there is some potential savings there. So I think once we get an architect on board, we can start having those discussions.
Beyond this project, are there other future major projects at Bud Detter Field?
Yeah.
Or Hobart Detter?
Hobart Detter.
I
Yeah.
still call it Bud Detter too.
You dated yourself.
That dates me.
Yeah, we all do.
So the next project that's on the horizon would be to improve the canopy and press box that goes over the main stands. The stands themselves are in pretty decent shape.
That they are.
I'm guessing they're 15-ish years old. They were before me. But they didn't replace the canopy that goes over the top and the press box that's up above. So it'd be replacing that. I have that in the CIP budget. I don't remember the year, but it's in my 5-year plan. So within the next 3-ish years, I would say.
The So the dressing rooms, that project got completed, didn't it, or is it?
Yes, yep,
Yeah.
It is complete.
it is completed,
Okay.
yep, they've been using it, I think this is their third season
Oh, okay.
using it.
Time gets away, boy.
Yep, yeah, so, the college uses it, and then the Monarchs use it, and then about half of the building is for maintenance. So my maintenance staff has a nice area. The other thing I did want to point out too, is, Schaefer Johnson Cox Fry will be using, engineering consultants, local firm, for structural engineering, electrical engineering, and all of the site work as well. So even though they are a Wichita firm, there's a local tie with engineering consultants, which that was something else we consider when we review these.
Well, I want to comment to you that I have worked on that building before as an electrician, and you don't have very much room there. You got the power lines, 7,200-volt lines over your head, and removing that fountain will give more, I would think, because it's real tiny in here.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's a challenge. That's
Yeah.
probably one of the biggest challenges you're gonna have as far as space is concerned.
Yep.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, one idea we've kicked around is maybe this concession stand acts as a central hub, and we have smaller, even temporary satellite concession stands, maybe down first base and third base side. So designing this building so a cart can come and go very easily and efficiently, maybe something we look at, because we don't have a lot of room to make just big, nice concession stand there because it's so tight. And another issue we want to address is, I think I mentioned it, the stacking of people in line has created a lot of problems. And then with all the COVID recommendations of the 6-foot spacing, I think when you separate people at 6 feet in line, I think you can only get 3 people in line before you hit the stands. So that'll be another issue we address with this. And then in my memo, I did mention the family restrooms. We are currently not code compliant. We do not have a family restroom. And so this would include 2 family restrooms. And then if budget allowed, the next piece would be a small office for a tournament director. So during a tournament, they would have a place to plug in a computer and those sorts of things. So.
Okey-dokey.
Well, Gary Holler is certainly a name we recognize here in Hutch, done a lot of great work. Is there a motion or further questions on this item?
Well, I would move to approve the contract with Schaefer Johnson Cox Fry Architecture for design services for the concession building at Hobart Detter Field for an amount not to exceed $29,500 and authorize the mayor to sign.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Dayline,
Yes?
Soldner,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Garza.
Yes, and one last comment, we have a great team that Monarchs, they bring a lot of people there, because I go to their games, and this is gonna bring a lot more people, and this is gonna add a good touch to the stadium, and I say yes. I comment, whatever, yeah.
Awesome.
And Torres de Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8, report of city officials.
All right. Nancy, do you have anything for us
I
today?
do not.
Okay, what about you, John?
Just a quick question, 5th and Main intersection, Jeff, do you have a feel for when that might reopen?
Yeah, we added some additional services to the scope, while that project was still opened up, so.
Okay.
Engineering tells me it's probably gonna go 30 days past what we originally anticipated, which was Thanksgiving, so if I'm throwing easy numbers at it, I'd call it January 1.
January, okay.
Weather permitting, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. What do you have, Steve?
I have nothing today.
All right. What about you, Sarah?
I don't have anything either.
Okay. I have an item that's kind of random, but I got an email from a former resident who reminded me that next year is Hutchinson's 150th birthday. And so
Yeah.
I thought, yeah.
I forgot about that.
It hadn't occurred to me that it's the sesquicentennial, but I thought that we should make plans now to do something to mark that. I don't know what that means. Maybe put together a committee of volunteers who are interested in, I don't know if it'd be an event. Who knows where we'll be at with COVID, but just something to celebrate our community, bring us together, and kind of just, yeah, I don't know what it looks like, but I wanted to get the council's thoughts on whether or not you're interested in putting together a group of volunteers to find a unique way to mark that occasion.
Is there a month for that?
Well, I think that regardless of when the anniversary is, we would want to do it later in the year, like summer or later.
It's August,
So,
Is August when we were officially founded?
August 15th, 1872.
Okay.
Well, that's a good month.
yeah, August is a
Yeah.
great month. It's,
Yes.
I know that the chamber has pushed out their annual meeting until the summer, so maybe it's even something we could do in concert with their event. Yeah, I'm not sure, but if people are interested, I can put it out there and see if there's a group of people who might want to.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth exploring further. Maybe the Historical Society would have some interest.
I did reach
Museum.
out to Michael Abels with an email, so
Yeah.
hoping that he would definitely be a part of that. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, okay, well then,
But
I'll-
don't they have those neighborhood things in August as well?
National
Kids'
Night Out.
Yeah,
National Night Out.
Yeah, of course, it got moved this year, so who knows? But yeah,
Yeah,
that-
but it might be that might be a good day too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
with so we definitely want to get a wide range of opinions on how best to mark the occasion. But
I think at least explore it.
okay, I'll see what I
Okay.
can't, what kind of interest level I can get from folks. And then the only other question I had was if we've made any progress on a study session or budgeting strategy session prior to next year's conversations around the budget. I know that was discussed a little bit at last meeting.
Yes,
So-
I don't have anything for you guys at this meeting, unfortunately. I know we were gonna have some budget discussions at the next meeting, the 15th. I hope to have something in front of you guys at that time.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you, Mayor.
Well, over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, as you brought up the discussion on stormwater with State Fair, staff has met with that group up there, Ed Berger specifically, several times in the last, I'm gonna say 30 days. And they do have some possibilities for reducing some of their stormwater fees per the ordinance. We've discussed that with them, and I believe that there's certainly an appetite for that now, given their financial condition that maybe they've never had before. They're in dire circumstances, as you guys well know. While I was having that discussion with them, there was an ask that came up, and it was one that probably would not go towards the bulk of their deficit that they're dealing with, but would show good faith with the city and the state, and that would be to offer a one-time economic fee, and they were proposing something in the amount of $50,000 as a one-time offering. And told them that I would bring that back to you all to see if there was an appetite for that. If there is, we can tee that up for future action. I think there's a concern in today's environment that there might be other cities, maybe not immediately, but there could be other cities with an appetite to pilfer
Here we
our
go again, huh?
our
Yeah.
event.
Yeah.
And while 50 grand doesn't save much, it does show spirit and intent of kind of a collective mindset of securing that and showing them that we are a strong partner going forward. So that's something to think about. And if I don't see anybody that's really aggravated by the concept of it, maybe I'll bring that up at the next meeting and we can do some formal
Well,
discussions on
I
it.
do have a bit of a concern about that, because we have multiple nonprofits, schools, and businesses that have been hit very, very hard by COVID, and similar tourism outlets like the Fox or Stratica, the Cosmosphere, are also being being just hammered. And those are local entities, and we don't even own the State Fair. I'm not saying that I'm not on board with widely supporting it. I am, but we have been trying to get a concession for that stormwater project for years. And so I would like any action to be tied to an agreement to work collaboratively to address our stormwater issues. But that's just my recommendation, if everyone else feels like we should.
That was expressed by staff as well, Mayor,
Mhm.
that any cash incentives would certainly be tied in reliance to that being approved. I will say one thing, and I was unaware of this, but the agreement that they would strike with the city for potential impounding of water would not require physical improvements to be made. It would just
Mhm.
be the written instrument itself
Yes.
that would allow them that immediate savings. Well, I say immediate, but current year savings, I guess.
Did you get the feeling that the State Fair Board
Hmm.
would approve of that? It's been noted that they want to maybe improve
Yeah.
where the retention pond would be into a parking lot or something.
I sense that there was growing confidence,
Okay.
at least on Ed Berger's part, that that could be accomplished through formal action of his board. Although it would still require that, was my understanding from him.
Okay.
So if this were to happen, the annualized stormwater fees, what'd you say, was 50-some thousand?
53 grand, I think, a year.
Would that offset or be credited to their payment to us of the stormwater fees?
Yeah, it would just reduce it down to nearly in half, based on the sizing that we think is achievable. Yeah, they would cut their bill in half annually,
We'd cut their bill in half.
Moving
Yeah.
forward, but
yeah.
this year would be credited pretty much in full for the
Yeah, I
50,000?
think that's maybe part of the concept of the cash incentive
I see.
for this year. You know, basically, they make their payment, we turn it back around, because really under the utility provision that we have in place, you know, if we get into this business of rebating utility features by the ordinance, you might have a line clear out to the parking lot at the next
Mhm.
meeting.
Well, they have to meet certain criteria for them to get a reduction on their stormwater fee. And so as long as they meet those criteria, I don't have any problem with it, but that has to be done before any reductions take place.
So if this agreement were approved, would this be in the near term or long term, in the out years, as far as any physical capturing of stormwater? Do we know that at this point?
I don't know that, and I'm not sure I can stipulate that under the terms. But if you have it in place and you find that we've got stormwater issues that could be addressed by acting on it, it's something you already have in your pocket, and
Well,
it's.
we've got the Cow Creek project that's
Yep.
in place, $15 million project.
Yep.
And so this likely would be the next logical stormwater detention project.
I don't know that that would be true, actually.
Really?
Yeah, the impoundment area would probably not tie directly, based on my understanding, to the area of the state fair itself. It would be an adjacent neighborhood, and so we'd have to review the issues that adjacent
Gotcha.
neighborhood might be facing right now. Yeah, I don't know that it would be our very next project. And they still do have some concerns based on the potential loss of parking area that could occur and how that impacts their site during rainy weather and parking.
Well, if it rains that much that it's gonna collect in there, they probably wouldn't be using it for parking anyway, in my books. I mean, y'all remember the year that the RV
Yeah.
Show,
was
right.
here and it poured, and I mean, they were pulling these RVs out with, I don't know what, semis. That was a mess. So, you know, you wouldn't park on it anyhow if it's really.
Well, I for one am excited that the State Fair is entering back into conversations about that project, and anything we could do to
Yeah.
help facilitate that, I think is well worth it, because
Yeah.
that's gonna be worth a lot more than 50 grand if we don't have to divert whatever project was
Yeah.
intended for that area.
Okay. Thank
Jim,
you all.
more to come, huh?
Yeah,
Jim, make
yeah.
me understand this. They pay $50,000 to our stormwater project, or each year, is that what we're,
50 plus, yes, that's correct, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah.
and basically they want us to forgive the 50,000 for 1 year, is that what we're saying here? Or-
Yeah, and there was a little bit of I don't know that they felt super confident they were gonna get some of the CARES money coming back their direction, but they were waiting to see how much of that might be captured and brought back to them. And it seemed to me that if the city was going to consider the cash incentive, that we probably ought to wait and see and allow them to brief us on whether or not that has been fully determined.
And just as a little bit of background for the two newer council members, when we were looking at stormwater projects, across the city. The biggest need would have been greatly helped by having some of the property that's currently on state fairgrounds, or I think part of a retention pond. I'm not sure what that was for. And so we've been trying to negotiate with their governing body for many years to get that property that would help flooding all throughout the city. And they've been reticent to hand that over to us, which, you know, we would probably be the same way. I don't, I don't blame them, but if we had that, it's my understanding it would be very beneficial to our long-term flood issues, but I'm not an expert in that field. John certainly has more information.
Well, I don't want to make a big issue out of all of this, but I think it might be an appropriate time to have a conversation about removing this undertone that potentially other communities could be considered for the Kansas State Fair. And I think we need to put that to bed once and for all through this current State Fair Board and its management and the legislature, that we wouldn't be threatened, and I'm not suggesting that they are, but there's always overtones toward that. And I'd like to just put that to bed once and for all.
Okay. Well, and I think that's the sentiment that's shared by executive level staff at the State Fair. They share
Yeah.
that. So, and I think this goes a long way in suggesting that we are permanent partners with them, and we have a spirit of support and acceptance of that liability. Okay. Well, thank you guys. We'll have a little additional discussion with them, and then we'll bring this back and set it up for formal action.
Okay.
All right. We've also got some CID discussions that are probably going to come back to us. You guys will recall we discussed Christian Obla's recent request on those outlying parcels that are close to the mall. And I do know that we had consensus at that time, but they do want to explore it further, and it would require formal consideration. So I think you're going to see them approach us at least one more time in the form of an ask that would allow distribution protocols of that original instrument to be modified. And of course, they'll be able to explain that better as to how that would work. But you will see them again, I think, here in the near future.
Jeff, when that comes back, is there any way that we can have a background on what has been done in other communities when those CIDs were when those properties have been deeded over to someone else, but they keep the CID? I just want to know what's standard, because that seems really, I don't know, as shady. I don't know. I mean, and I don't mean to,
I'd be happy to. I can reach out to some other communities where I know some transfers have occurred and see how they've handled those.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And is it our current thinking, or is that up for discussion, that no longer in the future would be allowed to continue to transfer that CID to new ownership?
I think it's more accurate perhaps to say that the
Or with the
statute,
current ownership, I should say.
the statute traditionally didn't anticipate this, and it was more of an element that was encouraged under the spirit and intent of that incentivized policy that the people that put the money into the improvements of brick and mortar are actually the ones that are involved
Reap the
in the
benefits.
distribution of that. And so you get away from that a little bit. And so I think most of the people that jumped on the CID early on, most of the cities in the state, really didn't contemplate that. And so it's, I think, probably safe to say it's unconventional and not something you would typically see. I think it's probably what we're going to find out, Mayor, when I go out and make the ask amongst these other communities.
And I wonder if the statute doesn't need to be revised at the state to disallow for that. But I guess that's not our purview.
Something to consider, and we'll do some additional research on that so you guys will have that information. Also happy to report that we have engaged an interim human relations officer, David Sotelo. You all know David. He's or was the chairman for the Human Relations Commission. So we're excited to do that and see how that might work for the next couple of months until we get the position full-time seated. David would be eligible for consideration in that, along with anybody else that would meet qualifications at that time. So happy to have him on board.
Good.
Financial reporting will be the 15th meeting also.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Sorry, Nancy, did I interrupt you?
No, I'm just saying, good, I'm glad we got that in place.
Thank you. And I got a letter this morning from a young man, Mr. Creighton Warren, and I'd like to read it to you. I think it's a great letter. Dear Mr. Cantrell, have you ever been so excited to do something and when you got there, your plan is ruined? Today that happened to me. When I went to the skate park, it was full of older and bigger kids. I would like to see the city of Hutch build another skate park. One reason is for different age groups for safety, one for big kids and one for younger kids. In a different location, one on the north side of town that would be closer to other people. Having another one would make it less crowded for more kids to enjoy. Thank you, sincerely, Creighton Warren. And I just wanted to applaud him for being so young and so involved civically with the issues that go on. These are adult conversations that we typically have, like pickleball. And from his handwriting, I would guess that, one, he's very articulate, but he's probably 7 or 8 years old, perhaps. But appreciated that very much. Wanted to share that.
It's cute.
The topic of the Atrium Hotel, you guys may see that that's been boarded.
I
There's-
did.
Yeah, and while that's great, because the neighbors had some concerns that we had people in the building, and I think we might have even seen some evidence of that when we recently toured the building. That's great, safety is first and foremost, but that's pretty poor when you drive by on the highway and you see plywood over such a large building. That's a very sad sight. So we're continuing discussions, and at this point in time, certainly we've had a lot of discussions with the current building owner, and he is firm on his pricing. I don't know that we're really gonna get him off his mark. You guys will recall that original mark was, I don't think I'm saying anything that's not previously been published in the newspaper even, but it was 1.6 million. He's pretty firm on that amount. He really doesn't care how we amortize that out, as long as it pays a competitive interest rate as to what his current note is. He is current on his note. So that's pretty much already resolved as far as what our obligation would be to acquire the property. What's not so clear at this point is renewal and conversation with potential developers, and how they would interact with this proposal. We originally had a draft that Mr. Deardoff had put together. You guys may recall that. And John and I've had some conversations on this. There are some important elements inside that agreement, and we want to explore those further to see if this is something that would continue to bind and meet the accord of the parties. So we're gonna have those discussions, bring it back to you all to see if this is something that we want to advance on as a community, as a city, and at least know what the parameters are at that time, because so much has changed because of COVID. It's really interesting when you try to get the pro forma now on these type of events and how they're being leveraged or collateralized in the discussion. The pledging on this sort of thing is really not conventional at this point at all. So it'll be a creative discussion, I'm sure. And also, we had the discussion on Arc Canoe, and what I would propose that I do, I'll send them a second letter letting them know that the governing body still has an appetite to lease potentially property to them, copy Justin on it, so at least they know that we haven't outright said no, but that does remain available to them, which would be consistent with our first letter we sent them some time ago. And I think that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor. I'll rest for questions.
You don't have further comments or questions? Or is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, please call the roll.
Dayline,
Yes.
Solomon,
Yes.
Bagwell,
Yes.
Garza,
Yes.
Turner, Sticker, Hall.
Yes.